This week's question is from Josh Turner. Josh has been running for about 14 months, and Josh would love some advice on how to perform better towards the end of a race and how to improve muscular endurance, maintain speed and form, and build the strength needed to last longer in a race. For context, I fuel at around 90 grams of carb per hour, primarily using precision gels, so I don't believe energy depletion was an issue. Instead, it felt more like muscular fatigue. To work towards this goal, I've started incorporating more flat road sessions to boost speed and running economy, hill workouts to build climbing strength and overall increase in mileage. I'll aim to be around 80k per week. I'm still building up after recovery from Lakes in a Day, pushing it up a little more as I get closer to the race. I also signed up for shorter fell races to keep things spicy. Whilst I know advice might not be in time to shape my training for Pennine Barrier, I see this as a long-term goal, so it will definitely help my training overall. I want to stick to around 50-mile distances for now and see how much I can improve. Considering how much change from the 50k to the next, I wonder if similar improvements can be made for the 50 milers. Thanks so much in advance for your insights. I really appreciate your help, Josh Turner. 14 months, that sounds like quite a young athlete, and I remember my journey. It took me quite a long time to get that back end endurance where races didn't fall apart, that last kind of 10, 15k. Yeah, who wants to go first with this? Trish?
For everything you said, I'd say your general formula looks pretty good. One of the best ways you can improve muscular endurance and particularly form and stuff like that is strength work, basically. That adds a huge difference in terms of your capacity as a runner. So if you're not getting any strength work in there, I'd look at that. The other thing particularly is race strategy, and that's a massive one. Generally, the pace that we start off, I'd say with pretty much all of my athletes, it's always the guys who start off too fast. And pretty much I'd say every race I do, it's always the guys who start off too fast. It's easy to think when you're starting a race that you're not running too fast, but you probably are. So I would say look at your race strategy, because you want to be able to run comfortably for the vast majority of the race, and that will allow you to have some in the tank to then finish strong. You're not racing the first half of the race. You're trying to maintain consistency and you're trying to move as efficiently as possible whilst maintaining that flow, really. So I would say, in terms of what you're doing, I'd say that looks pretty good. It's a good little formula. Add some strength work to improve the musculoskeletal system, your power output. The other thing, like you've already said as well, in terms of the vert training you're doing, as you increase vert training, generally mileage does drop off a little bit. So that's to be expected. And you've got to get the balance right with that. If you do too much vert training, you can often have an injury flare up as a result of that. So that's another thing to look at. But my two things would be get some strength into your program and just look at your overall pacing. It's a pacing strategy that I would say is the key thing that will help you there.
Russell, what do you think? You're nodding your head.
I'm very strict on this stuff, Josh, so you're not going to like anything that I have to say, but just with that proviso, I'll get stuck in. You're right on the limit of the least amount of volume that I would do for a 50 miler. Sorry to say, I think that you're running 50 miles a week in training, yet you want to do 50 miles in one go. Thinking about that concept, rather than dividing it into 7 and having a good night's sleep every night, you're going to do all of that in one go. That isn't going to potentiate your body as well as you could. 50 miles a week isn't enough. And I'll tell you why. The average person spends 4 hours on their screen scrolling or watching Motherland or whatever viral thing. And you can normally find more time than you think. So I would get out and do more miles, because that's the absolute best way to specifically strengthen up your body, your bones, your mitochondria, the whole thing. There's so many things we don't even understand yet about how beneficial it is. Moving outside, it doesn't have to be running, but more time on feet, I would say, is really going to help. And then, like Trish said, you're a man, you're going to go out too fast. So you need to put something in place to prevent that from happening. A lot of the guys that I coach, I get them to very carefully make sure they don't overtake somebody that they know is slower than them in the field until the second half. and make sure that it's what's called a negative split. The second half, the second 25 miles is faster than the first one. So you finish full of running, and then you've got momentum and you've got headroom to move into the next race, rather than you smashed yourself again and it feels awful. I would very seriously consider, as well as the weight training and everything else, just getting out and doing more when you can. You can find the time.
I am sure I have very few athletes actually that in peak volume weeks would go over 50 maybe, but most of my athletes are over 50 miles a week. I think that to me is quite a crunch point of injury risk, actually having the ability to recover from sessions.
They're going too fast. That's all. If you want to run
all the time. So I don't think you need to but we're all different, aren't we? I don't think we actually need to get caught up in your volume. It sounds like you've got the ingredients for a good plan, but often I find when people come with me with this, like, I'm doing all this, is they're actually doing too much. They're trying to do like 2 or 3 sessions a week plus a long run. They're trying to get everything in. I'm doing all the things that's it, but nothing. So a little bit more careful thought about like actually maybe just doing 1 session a week, but making sure it's really, really good. And then you can working and making sure that your easy runs are easy, and that your long run, if you're thinking, and I think perhaps as well, we haven't touched on like actually the mental bit of this back end of this race, Josh. When things get really hard, you need to practice mentally what's going on in your head when things get really hard. Like the back end of an ultra is really hard. We don't see that. We don't see, the crying, the puking, I really want to walk. Everything in your brain is telling you that this is really hard and you should go slower and you should walk. And it takes either a very special person to be able to ignore that, or it just takes practice. And you go, I've been here before. I need to keep moving. And one of the you do say you take 90 grams of carbs an hour. Maybe you need more. Maybe you need to look at overall whether you're piling those carbs in at the beginning. And then when you drop off of that energy depletion, is those carbs going down? Because I bet they are. Because I think one of the biggest things about the fallout and the drop off of pace in the back end of races is either not enough fueling at the start, going off too fast, or you drop off your fueling because you're going slower, and then you get in that negative headspace of like, I'm not worthy to be here, it's all over, and so you stop fueling. So having a look at that, maybe choosing a race that you're less invested in to have a little practice. Try going off a bit slower, as you say. Try really making sure, have your fueling plan, stick to it, and actually see what you're taking as well. And then as well, spend a little bit of time on your mental strategy as well. What are you going to do? What are you going to turn to when things get tough? You can practice this as well in training. And a good way to practice this sort of like back end, I'm really tired, I don't want to keep running, is to actually incorporate into your long run and do something like set yourself like maybe a 2.5 hour long run, have a little warm up, and then run about 20 to 30 minutes tempo. Tire your legs out, tire your brain out a little bit, and then run about steady for an hour. And you have to hold that pace when you're tired and you don't want to, and you've still got to fuel, and you're practicing that dialogue in your brain of like, oh, we could just slow down. We could just slow down. And you're like, no, I keep. So you're in that sort of safety blanket. You're not in a race, but you're just practicing. And again, that's going to help with your muscular endurance as well. Josh, you got so much information thrown at you, but it's such a great question because I know is part and parcel of ultras is the first, especially a 50 miler, nobody goes the first 25 miles. Well, very rarely. First 25 miles were awful. Then the next 25 miles, that's quite rare. It's nearly always, I ran a great 25. So and that's why we're addicted to it, because it's trying to, every time we're trying to get better. But I love the fact you are trying to get better. Lots of things to think about, and let us know how you get on, Josh.
We know there's a huge difference between a 50 miler and a 100 miler. From a training point of view, would you guys, assuming the course is like apples for apples, would you say a 50k was spectacularly different to training for a 50 miler?
I think the key thing that Russell said there is the mileage difference. With the shorter distances, if you're a fast runner, generally you can get away with that. But it's the muscle fatigue. You have to have the miles and the legs for the longer stuff. I really do believe that getting that base is super crucial for being able to then to do those bigger miles and to do them well. The other thing I'd just say, Josh, is that nobody is at the end of a 50 miler is feeling good. Like, at the end of the day,
I'm not feeling good on an 18 miler on Saturday.
Yeah,
I was like, I can't believe I run 250 miles for fun. And at mile 14, I was like, oh my God, 4 more miles. I'm going to die. This is terrible.
Yeah. But nobody's feeling good. Everyone has breakdowns.
Mental, physical.
I mean, have you not listened to Eddie on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, so, Josh, let's go for a run together. Can you imagine you and I at the back end of that thing?
So, we've all been there. And I can promise you this: from the top end to the bottom end, everyone is feeling crap towards the end at some point. From the absolute front of the pack to the last person.
You're not alone. Remember that next time. That penine barrier.
Not alone.
We are here with you.
Good luck, Josh.
Take a gel, do up your shoes, run some more miles.
Russell's coming to shout if you do.
I'm not going to join in with that. Nobody needs that.
No ukulele next time.
Excellent.